Good evening, sir.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yes, good afternoon. Same to you. So, hello participants. Should I start? I think I should wait for 3 4 minutes. Okay. Hello. ଆଉ
हाँ sir.
ଆରମ୍ଭ କରିବା ନା ଆଉ 2 3 ମିନିଟ୍ ଅପେକ୍ଷା କରିବା?
मैं सर स्टार्ट कर ଦେଇଥାନ୍ତୁ ହେଇଗଲେଣି 4
4 5
ଜଣ।
ହେଇଗଲେଣି ଆଚ୍ଛା ଓକେ ଓକେ we'll
ହଁ
start gradually others will join okay
ହଁ
ଆଚ୍ଛା
sir.
so I think today it's the last class of this course on social movement and politics in India. In the previous discussions we have very briefly, of course, because the subjects are so very vast and time is so limited. We have covered only very important points of the subject. Still, then we have covered the major points of, say, the Dalit movement, backward class movement, ethnic movement, then women movement, regional movements, then also some religious and communal movements, and also I have touched very briefly on the agrarian movements, the movement of the farmers and peasant movements. Today we shall begin with working class movement. Whenever we come across the term worker class, immediately Marxist literature comes to our mind. Because in the Communist Manifesto, Karl Marx has given a clarion call to the workers of the world. You must remember that. Workers of the world unite. You have nothing to lose but your chains. Chain means ଶୃଙ୍ଖଳ, bondage. ସେ ଶେଷରେ କହୁଥିଲେ the worker section जोटा कि से तंगर मार्क्सियन लिटरेचर प्रोलेटारिएट ବୋଲି କହୁଥିଲେ ପୁଞ୍ଜିବାଦୀ ମାନଙ୍କୁ ବୁର୍ଜୁଆ ବୋଲି ସମ୍ବୋଧନ କରିଥିଲେ. He argued that you see workers have nothing to lose. ଜଣଙ୍କର ସିନା କିଛି ପଜେସନ ଥିଲେ ସେ ଲୁଜ କରିବ. You have not possessed anything. You have possessed only pain, ଶୃଙ୍ଖଳ, bondage, exploitation. You are being exploited by the bourgeois class, the exploitative class. So if you workers of the world unite, make a revolution, then you can overthrow the bourgeois section, the exploitative class, and there shall be proletarian dictatorship. No worker ମାନଙ୍କର dictatorship ହେବ. That was a call. So whenever any topic on working class movement, it comes to us. Marx and his prophecy, his philosophy came to us. In the ଆମେ ମୋଷ୍ଟଲି ଆମେ ରେଫର କରୁଛେ ପ୍ରତ୍ୟେକ ମୁଭମେଣ୍ଟରେ ଇଣ୍ଡିଆନ୍ କଣ୍ଟେକ୍ସଟକୁ because this topic is mostly social movements in India. ତେଣୁ ଆମେ ଯଦି ଇଣ୍ଡିଆର ୱାର୍କିଂ କ୍ଲାସ ମୁଭମେଣ୍ଟର ହିଷ୍ଟ୍ରିକୁ ଯିବା, in our case the modern working class, it arose in India in 19th century. And worker section ଟା କେତେବେଳେ ଆସିଲେ, କାରଣ ଆମେ ଜାଣିଛେ India is one agricultural country. You know, peasants, farmers, they have pre-existed the workers. Concept of worker ba ଗୋଟେ working class concept ଆସିଲା only after industrialization. जो समय industry बसला, factories ଆସିଲା, railways ଆସିଲା, shipping companies dockyard ତିଆରି ହେଲା. So activities relating to the railroads, buildings, etc. Then only concept of working class it came. So modernization, mostly industrialization, urbanization, this was after working class section of our Indian context. So for the majority of the workers in colonial India, the recruitment and working conditions were not as free as our present day. And our economy was less developed. And prior to independence, the colonial condition also had its impact and bearing on the labor movements. So what is a working class movement? अनेक समय हमर गोटे कंफ्यूजन है पारे बहुत ट्रेड यूनियन मूवमेंट अछि धरन हम प्रीवियस सम क्लासेस रेफर करथिले ऑल इंडिया ट्रेड यूनियन कांग्रेस एटसेट्रा फैक्ट्रीज डॉकयार्ड उगरे ट्रेड यूनियंस अछि समानकर मूवमेंट मध्य समानकर दाबी संबल हुए बट इट शुड बी क्लैरिफाइड the working class movement and trade union movements they are something different. They are not the same. You know, working class movement, it is a broader connotation. Working class movement has always a broader connotation, whereas trade union movement is slightly myopic. It is inside the working class movement. So we can say otherwise that trade union movements are working class movements, but all the working class movements are not trade union movements. I think now you can simply establish this. Trade union movements are working class movements, but all the working class movements are not trade union movements. तार अर्थ working class movement भितरे स्फीयर भितरे ट्रेड यूनियन मूवमेंट छड़ा अन्य मूवमेंट माने मध्ये आसुचंती. So all kinds of movements they are coming under this broad concept of working class movement. It includes silent protest, passive resistance, and also individual protests, strikes, reaching the level of general strikes. All these things can come under working class movements. কিন্তু strictly speaking, ସେମାନେ trade union movement ନୁହନ୍ତି. So think in terms of a labor movement, Shramik Andolan. It may range from everyday struggles of the workers to general strikes encompassing the whole industry or many industries. It covers the activities of and the movements of the workers within the capitalist system. But on the other hand, trade union movements, they accept the industrial system as given, but they attempt to make it more human, more amenable to the needs of the workers. And it tries to reform the working and living conditions of the workers. ସେମାନଙ୍କ demand mostly କ'ଣ ରହେ worker ମାନଙ୍କର living condition ଟାକୁ ଆମେ improvise କରିବା. Better working condition can be fostered, can be provided. So a trade union, as we understand the term, is a continuous association of wage earners for the purpose of maintaining or improving the conditions of their employment. It's a continuous association of the wage earners. And constantly semane employment condition को improve करने में दाबी उपस्थापन करते, they demand for that. So working class और trade union भितर is very subtle difference is there, distinction. Working class concept as ଗୋଟେ capitalistic economy ର ଗୋଟେ integral part. Capitalistic system रे बा पुंजीवादी system रे worker class आसिला. धरो industry owner, he engages workers. And the stresses of this capitalism were introduced in India in 19th century under the colonial rule. এবং ইনিশিয়ালি ଦେଖିବା ରେଲୱେଜ ଆଉ ପ୍ଲାଣ୍ଟେସନ ୱାର୍କର ମାନେ ମଧ୍ୟ ଥିଲେ ପ୍ଲାଣ୍ଟେସନ ସେ ସମୟରେ ଯୋଉ ପ୍ରଥମ ତିଆରି ହେଲା ପ୍ଲାଣ୍ଟେସନ ଆଉ ରେଲୱେଜ they were initial enterprises to herald the era of colonial capitalism in India subcontinent. ଆପଣ के प्लांटेशन धर विशेष कर ब्रिटिश समय टी प्लांटेशन ଆପଣ आसाम कोंतु ଆପଣ मुन्नार जति देखंतु केरल रे बड़ बड़ प्लांटेशन सब अछि दार्जिलिंग कोंतु ये सब बड़ बड़ टी प्लांटेशन वा चा बागान चा बगीचा सब कॉलोनियल रूल समय ब्रिटिशर माने तार मालिकाना नहीं थे. They are the employees, they are the capitalists. So plantations and railway, they herald the era of colonial capitalism in Indian subcontinent. For example, a British company, the Assam Tea Company, was established in 1839. Virtually 19th century, mid 19th century, it proliferate kala, adhika badhila. So this tea plantation company of 1839 to set up tea gardens in Assam. Coffee plantations were also started in South India. ଆପଣ ଦେଖିବେ କୋଲପୁର के सब एरिया कॉफी प्लांटेशंस ମଧ୍ୟ ବହୁତ ଅଛି by 1840. So companies which were organized along capitalist lines and produced for international market, they have established these plantations. You know, the port cities, particularly port city गुड़ाको capitalistic economy सब सेंटर होला कारण पोर्ट जो फिनिश प्रोडक्ट हैला ताको बाहर को पठिया पे बंदर आवश्यकता हैला. सो विशेष करी जो सब पोर्ट सिटीज लाइक बॉम्बे, कलकत्ता, मद्रास, they become the centers of the capitalist economy. cotton mills in Bombay, jute mills in Calcutta, and several factories in Madras. They were set up in late 19th century. Also, similarly, in other cities also like Ahmedabad, Kanpur, Solapur, Nagpur, the factories and industries they have come up. But it was mostly owned by the Indians. Statistics says that by 1914, there are 264 cotton mills in India, employing 260,000 workers. There are 60 jute mills with 2 lakh workers. And the railways provided work to 6 lakh people. Plantations provided work for 7 lakh workers. And mines, they have provided job for 1.5 lakhs, 1 lakh 50,000 workers. So, ट्रेड यूनियन बोली गोटे कॉन्सेप्ट आसा पूर्वर मध्य वर्कर्स मूवमेंट थिला. So even before the emergence of trade union, after the First World War, there have been various forms of labor movements and protests against low wages, long working hours, inhuman condition of work, etc. The trade unions, however, were the most organized and advanced form of labor organization. ତେଣୁ ट्रेड यूनियन ଆସିଲା ପରେ वर्कर्स मूवमेंट बेसी स्ट्रीमलाइंड ହେଲା, ऑर्गेनाइज्ड ହେଲା. Although the plantations, mines, they contained a large number of workers who were heavily exploited, their conditions did not attract much attention in the initial period because they are all far from the urban areas. Plantation गुड़ाक बहुत इंटेरियर पार्ट रे थिला, अर्बन एरिया रो दूरे रहउतला. तेणु जो माने अर्बन एरिया रे जो लीडर्स बा सोशल रिफॉर्मर माने काम करथले सेमानक नजर को ए डिस्ट्रिक्ट प्लांटेशन माने करे काम करथवा लेबरर मानकर समस्या बेसी आसी करनुला. They could not take note of that because mostly public activists, journalists, I mean reporters, reformers, they are operating in the urban areas. But these plantations and mines, etc., they are far away from these urban areas. But in spite of this isolation, plantation workers on their own registered their protest against the exploiters. And since 1884, सेमानकर प्रोटेस्ट मूवमेंट रो विषय रे विभिन्न रिपोर्ट्स धीरे धीरे संग्रहित करा गला. इट केम टू द लाइमलाइट. देयर डिमांड्स दे हैव कम टू द लाइमलाइट. The workers in the cotton, jute and industries, etc., and also in the railways, they are both in the public attention. The early social workers and the social activists, the philanthropists, they are also involved with them. And that is the reason that why their demand could catch public attention. By 1890s, the worker strikes became very frequent. And they're so frequent that the authorities spoke about the strike mania. Strikes authority strike mania. Strike that is why they're coming forward with the strikes. Strike, frequency of strikes that could involve more workers so that the protest movement was strengthened. So the workers are also gradually learning how to protest, and they sought forum for the redressal of these grievances. The war years, the years in which this country was engaged in war, it has allowed the industrialists to make huge profits. किंतु इंडस्ट्रियलिस्ट माने प्रॉफिट कला बेले वर्कर मानकर कंडीशन आहुरी वर्सन हो गला से मानकर वेज डिक्लाइन हैला and this situation made the workers extremely dissatisfied. अरे इंडस्ट्रियलिस्ट ने बेसी प्रॉफिट करछन भरा हमर वेज बढ़िबार ना धर नै बर डिक्लाइन करौछन वेजेस आर इन अ डिक्लाइन. So in many industrial centers bigger strikes have taken place. There are many people and organizations involved with these workers. In Bengal, Sasipad Banerjee initiated welfare activities among the workers since 1870s, and he tried to educate the workers and to teach them how to voice, how to table their grievances. And for this purpose, Sasipat Banerjee in Bengal founded a particular club which is known as Working Men Club, Men's Club in 1870. And also in Bombay, N. Lokhande was actively involved in the welfare and activities of the workers. In 1890, he established the Bombay Mill Hands Association. And in 1898, he started publishing a journal. The name of the journal is Dinbandhu. It was in Marathi. It means that in various places, the social activists, the philanthropists, they come forward. They are not workers themselves, but they actively sympathize with the cause of the workers by various means, by building associations, establishing associations, and creating scope where the workers' demand and the workers' grievances can be redressed. So, the trade unions emerged in India after the First World War. And during the war period, the workers are involved in this movement, the trade union movement. Then also, this raised their consciousness and further the rising prices of the essential commodities, decline in the real wage of the workers, increase in the demand for the industrial products, resulting in the expansion of Indian industries. Then Gandhis also called for the non-cooperation movement. Then also the Russian Revolution, ideology of the Bolsheviks. They are the main factors which led to the emergence of trade unions in the post-war period. In 1917 Bolshevik revolution was just after the First World War. So in the post-war period, union activities they have been encouraged by the leftist movement in many parts of the world. तो तार इम्पैक्ट हम मद्रास लेबर यूनियन तैयारी है April 1918 रे. It is generally considered to be the first trade union in India, the Madras Labor Union, which was created in 1918, and it was mainly an organization based on the workers of Carnatic and Buckingham Hills in Madras. But workers also from other trades, such as tramways, rickshaw pullers, they also joined the union at the initial stage. So for the first time, a trade union consciousness in India created after this formation of the Madras Labor Union in 1980. And around the same time also labor agitations, protest movements, labor movements have started in Ahmedabad. The workers in Ahmedabad were agitating for a bonus to compensate for the rise in the prices. And one of the leaders is Anshuaben Sarabhai, who was involved with the agitation, got in touch with Gandhi and requested him to come to Ahmedabad. So Gandhi stood by the side of the workers' demand. So in this way, textile labor associations they have come up. In Ahmedabad in 1920, and gradually this trade union movement picked up momentum. And many more unions they have come up in many other centers. One of the major developments in this trade union movement is the formation of the All India Trade Union Congress, AITUC, जो एक reference move in some previous class I have given, which was formed in 1920, All India Trade Union Congress. कारण बहुत लेबर लीडर्स जो मैंने विभिन्न एरिया रे काम करते से मैंने कहले that there is a need of a centralized union, a central organization of the labor रा आवश्यकता अछि. So बाल गंगाधर तिलक, NM जोशी, PP वाडिया, दीवान चमनलाल, लाला लजपत राय, Joseph Baptiste, and many others, they are trying to achieve this goal. এবং ঠিক সেই সময় 1919 মସିହାରେ ଦେଲେ ଇଣ୍ଟରନ୍ୟାସନାଲ ଲେଭେଲରେ ILO ଇଣ୍ଟରନ୍ୟାସନାଲ ଲେବର ଅର୍ଗାନାଇଜେସନ ମଧ୍ୟ ତିଆରି ହେଲା, ଏଷ୍ଟାବ୍ଲିଶ ହେଲା. ଇଟ୍ ଆକ୍ଟେଡ ଏଜ ଏ କ୍ୟାଟାଲିଷ୍ଟ. ତେଣୁ ବିଭିନ୍ନ କଣ୍ଟ୍ରି ମାନଙ୍କର ଲେବର ୟୁନିୟନକୁ ବା ଲେବର ମୁଭମେଣ୍ଟକୁ ମଧ୍ୟ ସେ ଗୋଟେ ମୋରାଲ ସପୋର୍ଟ ଏକ୍ସଟେଣ୍ଡ କଲା ILO. Lala Lajpat Rai became the first president of All India Trade Union Congress, and Joseph Baptiste was the vice president. And Motilal Nehru, Bithal Bhai Patel, they are also here present in AITUC. So it received a lot of support from the Indian National Congress. ତାପରେ 1920 ରେ ଦେଖିବେ being encouraged, inspired by the leftist ideology, particularly the ideology of the Soviet Union, Communist Party of India was formed. It was formed in October 1920. M.N. Rai was the moving force behind formation of this CPI. And soon after the formation of CPI, the communists they became very active in labor movement. अवश्य पर गोटे लैटर समय एआईटीयूसी गोटे स्प्लिट है एवं another organization came up, Indian Federation of Trade Unions, IFTU. So it was virtually a vertical split in AITUC and IFTU, that is Indian Federation of Trade Unions. It was formed out of that. And another also split occurred in 1931 due to divergence between the nationalist leaders and communist leaders. Because that is the period when the communists, they have severely criticized the national leader, Gandhi. They have criticized Gandhi's ideology and also have condemned the round table conference in which the Congress was participating. And they worked out and formed another federation of the trade union, which is called the Red Trade Union Congress, RTUC. And देखो तो तीन थोड़ा split है AITUC बाहर इसला IFTU. Again there is a further split. That is the formation of the Red Trade Union Congress, RTUC. Thus, by the time 1931, there were three national federations of trade union: AITUC, IFTU, RTUC. AITUC होଉଛି ऑल इंडिया ट्रेड यूनियन कांग्रेस, जोटा कि मदर ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, फर्स्ट फॉर्मेशन होइतला. सेथुर बाहरी की तयारी हला IFTU, पुनी फर्दर स्प्लिट हे तयारी हला RTUC. IFTU टा होଉଛି इंडियन फेडरेशन ऑफ ट्रेड यूनियंस and RTUC होଉଛି the Red Trade Union Congress. So virtually this is a brief history of how trade unions they have come up in India. এবং ভ্যারিয়াস ট্রেড ইউনিয়নর মধ্যে পলিটিক্যাল অ্যাফিলিয়েশনস ଥିଲା বিভিন্ন পলিটিক্যাল পার্টিজ কি. As soon as the unity was achieved, the division resurfaced in the organizations owing to the varying politics of the trade union leaders. এবং সেকেন্ড ওয়ার্ল্ড ওয়ার ହେଲା ବେଳେ the rift came up. It came to the surface. କିଛି ଶ୍ରମିକ ନେତା led by M.N. Roy, they believed that the fascist countries were the main enemies and the democratic countries should be supported against them. But the majority of the trade union leaders, comprising the nationalists and communists in the initial stages, while agreeing with this opinion, in principle, they decided to remain neutral. Because Britain, which was controlling India, was not willing to promise independence to our country. That is why M.N. Roy group, the group led by M.N. Roy, broke away from AITUC in July 1941. And they have decided to support the British Indian government in its war efforts. And they have sponsored strikes to convince the workers to raise productivity. And this group set up the Indian Federation of Labour, IFL. So in the post-war period, second war period, जो समय हमारा independence प्रक्रिया प्राय आरंभ होला, when the controls of the national government was becoming apparent, political rivalry within the trade union became even more acute. Congress tried to influence the AITUC and its union to work along with Gandhian lines. The Congress party, which was taking the lead of the national movement, independence movement, freedom movement, decided to form its own trade union organization. The foundation of the May 1947 Indian National Trade Union Congress, INTUC, was the result of this effort. In 1948, the unions under the influence of the Congress, socialists, they came out of this INTUC. They formed another union that is called the Hind Mazdoor Panchayat, HMP. In 1949, another organization called United Trade Union Congress, it was formed. So, at various periods of time, many trade union organizations, they have come up because of the internal division, strife, and among the ideological rift between its leaders. What about the emergence and go of these trade unions in post-independent India? ଆମେ ଏଗୁଡ଼ାକ ଯାହା ଦେଖିଲେ 1947 ପୂର୍ବର ଯେମିତି ଫର୍ମେସନ ଅଫ ବିଭିନ୍ନ ଟ୍ରେଡ୍ ୟୁନିୟନ ହେଲା ଏବଂ ହାଉ ଇଟ୍ ୱାଜ ଫର୍ମଡ, ହୁ ଆର୍ ଦ ଲିଡର୍ସ ଆଣ୍ଡ ଅଲ୍ ଦ୍ୟାଟ୍. पोस्ट इंडिपेंडेंट पीरियड मध्य किछि किछि नुआ ट्रेड यूनियंस इट केम अप. देयर इज फॉर्मेशन ऑफ भारतीय मजदूर संघ बीएमएस इन 1955. 1947 पर घटना. इट वाज एफिलिएटेड टू जनसंघ. जनसंघ वाज फॉर्मड इन 1952. देखो तो प्रत्येक ट्रेड यूनियन बा श्रमिक संघ से माने विभिन्न पॉलिटिकल पार्टी से एफिलिएटेड है, सो दैट they can sustain themselves by the political support. So Bharatiya Mazdoor Sangh was affiliated to Jansangh. In 1970, following the split in Communist Party of India in 1964, AITUC also split, leading to the formation of C2, Center of Indian Trade Union. ठीक है, AITUC रो अलग है. एवं C2 was affiliated to the Communist Party of India, Marxist M. CPM को, not CPI, CPM, Communist Party of India जो Marxist branch को C2 was attached, aligned. एनु जो ट्रेड यूनियन मूवमेंट प्री इंडिपेंडेंट पीरियड रे गोटे सेंट्रलाइज्ड ऑर्गेनाइजेशन आरंभ होइतला, ता ना थला AITUC. हम जा बर्तन देखिए, it had become divided into 5 major organizations by 1970. 1920 रे AITUC आरंभ कि 1970 बेलକୁ देखिबा हम 5 टा ट्रेड यूनियन रो ऑर्गेनाइजेशन तयारी है. So in the post-independent period, the state became the sole arbitrator in the relationships between the industry and the working class. The economic recession in the late 1960s caused economic hardship for the workers in Bombay. and it was reflected in the growing unemployment and financial burden of the workers. So, inability of the traditional trade unions to solve the problems, because those trade unions, they could not solve these new emerging problems of the workers. And this provided a fertile ground for the birth and growth of Shiv Sena. Shiv Sena in Maharashtra founded a trade union যার নাম হচ্ছে ভারতীয় কমাগার সেনা. It emerged as an alternative to the traditional trade unions. So Shiv Sena started its own trade union, Bharatiya Kamgar Sena. It divided the working class on the ethnic ground, because it said that the problems of the working class were caused by large number of the workers who had come from other regions of the country. So virtually, this trade union started building up a foundation on ethnic grounds. But however, the Bharatiya Kamgar Sena also could not satisfy the workers. Rather, it generated a feeling of insecurity among the non-Maharashtrian workers. Maharashtrians and non-Maharashtrians, this type of division, this trade union has started creating. So, that this trade union rather has divided the workers on the ethnic lines, communal lines. So it could not satisfy, or it could not solve the problems of the workers. So by 1970s, there was a general feeling among different social groups of the country against the organized traditional political institutions and processes, like political parties, like the organizations affiliated to the parties. And this created resentment against the notion of politics. The strikes of the workers in the textile industries, in the railway industries, in railways during 1970s and 1980s, they are considered to be the most significant development in the history of the working class movement in the post-independent period. In 1974, the railway workers affiliated to the main trade union, except the Congress affiliated INTUC, that is Indian National Trade Union Congress, organized a nationwide strike. The government responded with a strong anti-worker stand and tried to break the strike. And workers, they were unable to sustain the strike, and they could not continue with it. While the political parties, especially those belonging to the left, they have organized the agricultural laborers. Sometimes in the agricultural laborers, they have launched agitation without the leadership of trade union. They demanded increase in the wages and number of rotis served to them in the breakfast. Increased in the shapes of this harvesting of the wheat. And during the agitation, the harvesters, they showed remarkable unity. And strike was observed in the peak season, that is the harvesting season in April, for 4 days. And the sanction imposed by the Jat landowning class on the agitating harvesters did not deter them. So, this strike of the agricultural workers could bring some success to the agitators, the strikers. The wages, the size of the sheaves, the number of the rotis were increased. The rotis served during the breakfast. I mean, the demand was to give them more. So, in many scholars, in their research articles, they have discussed about the collective actions of the seasonal migrant workers, which took place around 1983. For example, the brick works near Vadodara in Gujarat at the initiative of the local social activists, a trade union was set up there. However, that agitation in that Vadodara region was not that successful. I mean, some agitations, some trade union movements, they are successful. Some others, they could not meet the success. The working class movement in India was constrained by several factors. For example, one of the factors is working class forms a very small section of the working population in India. Therefore, there is no class politics in the country. Instead, Indian politics is a centrist politics. Of course, the rise of identity politics based on caste, language, religion, tribe, especially from the last 2 decades of 20th century, pose serious challenges to unite the working classes. So, uh, so rise of identity politics. You know, we have already discussed about identity politics, the caste politics, the religious politics, the politics which goes on ethnic lines, linguistic politics. These are all identity politics, please remember. So they pose also serious challenges to the working class. কারণ এই ফ্যাক্টর গুড়াক they deter the unity of the workers. So sometimes the workers unit can be seriously affected. And another thing is the encouragement to the market with the decline role of the state as part of the globalization agenda has further relegated issues of working classes to the background. Because the role of the state declines as a part of the globalization agenda. I already talked to you that with the process of globalization, there is a rolling back of the state. So these are some of the deterring factors. So the modern working class movement in India is a result of the introduction of the capitalistic economy by the colonial government. Plantations, railway, cotton jute mills, coal minings, other industries made their appearances in the colonial India. And initially, most of the capital was British, while certain industries such as cotton, textile, iron, steel were Indian owned. And lakhs of workers were recruited for running these concerns. The abysmal working and living conditions in the early decades gave rise to protest and ultimately led to the workers' movement. The organized struggles of the working class resulted in the betterment of the conditions, of course. So some of the working class movements they have yielded success, but some others could not find success so far as their struggle is concerned because of some of the deterring factors that I have just mentioned. Another important movement is workers' movement said I would have mostly manakar andolon. Fisher Puck. So we can also briefly discuss about the Fisher Puck movement in India. Because ଦୀର୍ଘଦିନ ପରେ ଅନ୍ୟ ମୁଭମେଣ୍ଟ ଉପରେ ଧର ୟୁନିୟନ ୱାର୍କର୍ସ ୟୁନିୟନ ଟ୍ରେଡ୍ ୟୁନିୟନ ପିଜେଣ୍ଟ ମୁଭମେଣ୍ଟ ଉପରେ ବହୁତ ଷ୍ଟଡି ହେଇଥିଲେ ବି ଦୀର୍ଘଦିନ ପର୍ଯ୍ୟନ୍ତ ଫିସର ପକ୍ ମାନଙ୍କର ମୁଭମେଣ୍ଟ ଇଟ୍ ହାଜ not come to the notice of the academics, the academicians or the researchers. They found these particular movements to be interesting and for study. And by this Fisher, the studies over this Fisher movement was, it has come up only of late because the collective actions taken by these Fisher Pucks themselves have been relatively less in number than those of other groups. Peasant movement, peasant workers, agricultural workers, କିମ୍ବା ଟ୍ରେଡ୍ ୟୁନିୟନ ୱାର୍କର୍ସ କୁହନ୍ତୁ ସେମାନଙ୍କ ତୁଳନାରେ ଏମାନଙ୍କର ସଂଖ୍ୟା ବହୁତ କମ୍ and that is why they have gone unnoticed. But gradually, their problems they have been raised by the political parties, civil society organizations, and also the church leaders. Gradually, this has been mainly in terms of demanding relief to the fisher folk who suffered due to natural disaster like tsunami. କାରଣ ଫିସର ଫକ୍ ମାନଙ୍କର ଲସ୍ଟା କେତେବେଳେ ହୁଏ ଯୋଉ ସମୟରେ ନ୍ୟାଚୁରାଲ ଡିଜାଷ୍ଟର ହବ ଧର ମତ୍ସ୍ୟଜୀବୀ ମାନେ whenever there is tsunami, the coastlines they face hazard, so naturally fishing business was affected. Still then, gradually fisher folk movement they have emerged in different parts of the country. While studying this fisher folks movement, we shall also give attention to the socio-economic conditions of the fishermen, their issues and problems, and collective action. And also again, mostly have brief references to the socio-economic condition of the fishermen, fisher folk in case of Kerala and Odisha. Because these two states being coastal states, and many fisher folk organizations and unions they have come up also in states of Kerala and Odisha. If we go for the socio-economic profile of this fisher folk, मत्स्यजीवी ମାନଙ୍କର ଆମେ socio-economic profile ଯଦି study କରିବା, first is heterogeneity. They form a quite a large section of the Indian population. Some studies shown that it is nearly 12 millions or more, even maybe more than that. And this fisher folk they have also contributed enormously to the economy of the country, particularly in the states situated along coastlines like Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Andhra Pradesh, Odisha, West Bengal, Goa, Andaman Nicobar, Pondicherry, Maharashtra, and Gujarat. These are the coastline states. So, mostly catching, selling, processing, and marketing fish was their business for centuries. The fisher folks they provide fish, which form the staple of the people living in the coastal states. It's a staple food. And also the non-vegetarian population living in other states. They also link Indian economy to the world economy through the export, the marine products. These fisher folks, they are not homogeneous groups. They follow multiple religions. A large number of them belong to the low castes. Apart from the coastal regions, they are also found in other areas of the country involved in the fisheries, ponds, big tanks. And mostly these fisher folk, they belong to the vulnerable groups of the society. A scholar, Professor John Curian, he argues that in some area of Tamil Nadu like Nagapattinam, fishing community is not poor. Generally, they are better off than many other social groups. In 3 decades of last century, there has been a considerable improvement in their economic conditions, but they remain outclassed in cultural, social, and political terms. So besides this division among them on religious and caste basis, they are stratified on the basis of ownership of vessels, employment of labor, and on this basis the fisher folks can be divided into three groups. First one is fisher folks who own vessels and work with their families. Jumakar nijaro donga pa boto esu roichi and they work with their families. This is the first category. The second category is those who own these and employ other fisher folks. They include film stars, politicians, and other wealthy persons. Wealthy persons, they own these, for example, the vessels and all that. But they employ other fisher folks. And third one, those who do not own them but work on others' vehicles, other vessels. So these are the three categories, according to some scholars, of fisher folk. The number of fisher folk who own vehicles is very small. Besides, majority of them own ordinary vessels, which are traditional and of poor quality. Those who employ others own trawlers and big boats, better quality and modern vessels. So the fishing activities depend on the weather condition, which are mostly hostile. During the period of unfavorable weather conditions, like your sea storms, tsunami, and all that, the fisher folks they get engaged in odd jobs on the harbors. So this Motsyajivimane, they depend on a large number of people. Like the intermediaries who work as the agents of traders, money lenders, non-fisher folk owners of trawlers and big boats. ଏବଂ ଫିସର ମାନଙ୍କର ମାର୍କେଟ କୁ ଡାଇରେକ୍ଟ ଆକ୍ସେସ ନଥାଏ. They have no direct access to the market. କାରଣ ଯିଏ ଧର ସମୁଦ୍ରରେ ବା ନଦୀରେ ମାଛ ମାରୁଛି, he is not going to sell it out directly in the market. So he has no direct access to the market. They sell their catch to the intermediaries or the agents, who in turn sell them to the traders. You know, market or fisher folk bhitere intermediaries they are operating. You know, direct access to the market, fisher folks usually they have no direct access to the market. You know, intermediary men they take their commission, and fisher folks they do not get the fair price of their catch. You know, ସେମାନେ ତାଙ୍କର ଯୋଉ due ପ୍ରାପ୍ୟ ବା ଲାଭଟାକୁ ସେମାନେ ପାଇପାରନ୍ତିନି, because intermediaries they take their commissions and other things. So fisher folks are deprived of their due. So their earnings are not enough to meet their basic needs. And also they have not sufficient sometimes money to purchase for the purchase of the boats, mechanized boats, net, etc. And this led to deprivation. Se tara nijara fair price ta pailani, he was exploited by intermediaries. So the intermediaries, merchants, non-fisher folk, richer fisher folks, owners of the big boats, those who work as money lenders, They, at the root cause of the deprivation, the impoverished condition of fisher folk. So they are exploited by this group. For example, the fisher folk borrow advance from the moneylenders, and the prices fixed by the latter. So this deprives the fisher from determining the right type of price to which he is entitled. Then another factor is he is also victim to natural disaster. Their close habitat, because they mostly have their living in their houses in the coastlines. Their close habitat dependence on the sea or the fisheries exposes the fisher folk to natural disasters like flood, typhoon, tsunami, etc. They are deprived of their houses, vessels. जो समय सुनामी आसला कि सी स्टॉर्म आसला तांका बोट सब भासी गला घर द्वार उड़ी गला the lives also they are at stake during these natural disasters. For example, this super cyclone of Odisha in 1999, it had affected the lives of the fisherfolk, the fishermen and women, to a great extent, devastated the life of the fisherfolk. That big cyclone, super cyclone of 1999 in Odisha. The tsunami of December 2004, which affected the coastal regions of Southeast Asia, had the devastating impact also on the residents and tourists of these regions. So they became the worst victim of these natural disasters, which also shattered their economic condition. Traditionally, fishing was carried out by a small, unpowered craft confined to the shallow waters. When mechanization began, it began with the Indo-Norwegian project in 1953, whereby mechanized fishing equipments were permitted to catch fish. And that too, with the aim of to increase fish catches and augment the production of shrimps. Shrimp culture, chinkudi also. So increasing demand for shrimps from advanced countries like Japan and USA created a further impetus to intensify fishing with the use of bottom trawls. This not only led to dwindling of the fish stocks, but the traditional fishermen who were unable to afford mechanized fishing equipments began to face livelihood problems as the coastal fishing belt was captured by resourceful non-fishermen. And another factor is the government extended active support to the private groups through preferential credit schemes. And the beneficiaries of these new schemes are the rich traditional fishermen who are turned entrepreneurs and the non-fishermen with resources. So the impact of the technological change, mechanization, in an already fragile ecological zone, it resulted in a decline in the fish stocks, and it resulted in the decline of the income of the traditional fishermen. So the non-fisher folks were further encouraged to dominate fishermen. So the now you see, it is a now issue between the non-fishermen and fishermen, and most of the times non-fishermen, they become the cause of the ways for the fishermen. They dominate fisheries in the 1990s in the light of globalization. So globalization also has impacted the socio-economic condition of the fishermen. You know, you must be knowing, in Odisha, in Chilka Lake, Tata House also has started on shrimp project. It has already attempted to set up the shrimp farming in Chilka. So, which not only displaced the fisher folks but also created environmental hazards. Of course, there is a Save Chilka, Chilka Banchao Andolon, and of course, by that time, the government was forced to withdraw that particular project, the shrimp project and all that in Chilka. So, the main issues on which collective action of fisher folks were organized can be discussed under these heads. First one is the participation of the fisher folks in the fisheries and fishery management, sale and processing of harnessed catfish. Opposition to the introduction of travelers, resource allocation and management of fisheries, providing catamarans, boats, providing loans and grants, then rehabilitation in case of the natural disasters, exploitation by the agents, traders, and money lenders, I mean the intermediaries, and also other issues or the problems arising out of the bilateral relation between neighboring countries like Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Pakistan. Sometimes fisher folks are arrested in the neighboring countries. While fishing, they are not able to identify the demarcation of the sea line between India and other countries. So sometimes you must be knowing from the news that how trawlers are seized by the neighboring countries. This is a problem for them because they could not demarcate the dividing line between two countries. Whereas our fishing zone is concerned. So these are some issues involved in this fisherman. So, revolt and all that. Then also the leadership of the fisher folks movement in South India is provided by the church fathers, nuns, intellectual academic activists, students, social activists, professionals, community organizers. Many of these belong to the fisher communities. They work in cooperation with various NGOs concerning the socio-economic and ecological issues. Some important, examples of this leadership can be there. Thomas Kocheri, Udenvid, Paul Arakel, Albert Parisalullah, Peter D. Cruz. They are the leaders. Examples of some of the leaders organized the fisher folk in Kerala on several occasions. So mostly this leadership is provided by the church. John Kurian is known to have provided leadership to the fisher folks as an intellectual academic activist. The leadership operates at two levels, the local level and also national level. So in Kerala also this fisherman movement was organized. Kocheri actually took control of National Fishermen's Forum. Particularly this movement gathered momentum in Kerala. So Kocheri took the leadership. That fisher works organization was National Fishermen's Forum, NFF. They organized of course, this formation of this NFF under the leadership of Kocheri, it disappointed the earlier generation of the clergy and bishops, and they organized the Kerala Catholic Bishop Conference in Kottayam. Kocheri belonged to the radical leadership, and following his joining of the Akhil Kerala Shatantra Malsia Kochilali, it is a Kerala term, ASKMTF Federation, and the All Kerala Independent Fishermen's Federation. English version All Kerala Independent Fishermen's Federation. Taro Kerala version Akhila Kerala Sachantra Malsia Hachilali, like something. But the English version is All Kerala Independent Fishermen's Federation. The organization was split in 1983. The two groups are led by Kocheri and the other one by Parishavilla separately. So a large number of leaders of the fisher folks were influenced by the ideology of liberation theology, which sought an alliance between Marxism and Christianity in order to liberate the mankind from miseries of life. This is the ideology on which the leadership was functioning. So fishermen's organizations also were formed at various periods of time. First attempt to form fisher folks organization at village, state and national level in India were made in 1960s and 70s. Earliest union was formed in 1963 in Quilno district in Kerala. By 1980s, the union were formed in Alleppey, Cochin, Trivandrum, and Malabar districts. So, virtually in India, Kerala was the state where prominent fisher folks organizations have come up, like KSMTF and KLCFF, which I have already talked about. In 1978, the Fisher Fox Unions of Goa, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, and other states, they formed federations, which came to be called the National Fishermen's Forum (NFF). So, few examples also you can find in most of the texts and all that. The examples of collective action and various movements. Fisher Fox movement, particularly in Kerala, like the Kerala Independent Fisher Workers Federation. In 1981, this KSMTF organized demonstration in 1981 at the main focal points of 600-kilometer coastal line in order to catch the attention of the policymakers and planners. And the demonstration saw the participation of all age groups, which included a large number of women also. And the demands of these movements: exclusive fishing zone for the small scale fisher fox, a closed season for the trawling operation, particularly during monsoon months of the June to July, then a total ban on the purse operations, other demands for greater welfare measures for the fisher fox. And also, as the traditional rights to the sea, value system and the technology have undergone changes to their disadvantages. And as they were denied their traditional rights to the sale, fixed the prices, distribute the fish in the market in the post-independent India, the Fisher Fox organization demanded also that their indigenous values, rights must be restored, and also indigenous technologies must be restored. I can have a brief reference to the Fisher Fox movement in Chiliga, that is anti-prawn cultural legislation. I've already told you that how the Tata's project of shrimp culture was one when going to be installed was protested against. It is the largest brackish water sea of Asia. Lake of Asia. The Fisher Fox movement was held in 1999. Chilka Lake, known for its largest brackish water, is a source of livelihood in a large number of the fisher fox in Odisha. And it was a wetland of international importance declared by the Ramsar Convention. So it's a habitat of the large variety of biodiversity, including dolphins, different migratory birds, etc. So Fisher Fox launched an education against this shrimp farming in Silka in 1999. And the organizations which took lead in this Chilka must be Mahasangha, that is National Fisher Workers Forum, in World Forum of Fisher Harvesters, and the fish workers. They took the lead in this movement, and large section of the society from various levels of the society, they have also participated. They formed human wall to prevent the movement of vehicles into the city and stop. They have made roadblocks, and also the bond finally saw the light of success, and the swim culture project was stopped. Then with this, another important movements, because we're coming to the end of this discussion, must be referred to environmental movements, ecological movements, or conservation movements. जोटा कि एबे कंटेम्पररी टाइम्स रे सबुठारु इम्पोर्टेंट मूवमेंट्स बोली हमें परिगणित करछे, बिकॉज़ एनवायरनमेंट इज समथिंग व्हिच इज linked up with the question of life. Environment provides the life support system both for the men, the animals. So the whole world is thriving on environment. Once the environment is jeopardized, once the ecology is endangered, the life is also threatened, both non-human and non-human. So ecological justice is primary. The policymakers, they have been now pressurized to make policies which are eco-friendly, so that if a policy is ecologically friendly, then that is politically acceptable. While agrarian and working class movements have a long historical trajectory, environmental movements gained worldwide attention only in the second half of the 20th century. Environmental movement गुड़ाक आम 20th century second part में देखिले आगुरी environmental movement इसलिए इतना सुना जाऊँ नोटला agrarian movement working class movement गुड़ाक ताप क्या पूर्ण थे. So we should mention now that the scholars have tried to understand and analyze these movements in diverse ways. In general, these movements are grouped under tribal movements, peasant movements. Also, these are grouped under new social movements. Because ecological issues are associated with peasants, they are associated with the tribals, they are associated with the natural resources like forest, water. So, there is a particular value which has come up, which is known as environmentalism. I mean, the socialism, liberalism, communism, literature, we can say there is a term called environmentalism. Ecology is no more a branch of biology. It is no more an obscure branch of biology. Social sciences also, they have tried to give the due importance to environmentalism because it's linked up with the existence of the human being. Because if the environment is depleted, man's existence is threatened. So one of the scholars, Guha, talks of varieties of environmentalism. And mostly we shall now in brief touch upon the environmental movements in India, its issues, its concerns. The very genesis of environmental movement in India can be traced to the Chipko movement. I think in some time back in the last class, I suppose, I've talked of Chipko movement, which has happened in the Garhwal region of Himalayas, which is now in the new state of Uttarakhand. In fact, between 1970s and 80s, there are several struggles in India around the issues of the rights to the forest and water, which raised larger ecological concerns, like the rights of the communities to the forest and the resources, which talks of sustainability, which talks, environmentalism very interestingly also does not only the rights of the existing society or the human beings, but also the right of the unborn. Because that, very interestingly gives us this right of intergenerational justice, right of the unborn. যে পর্যন্ত জন্ম হয়নি, কারণ সস্টেনেবল গ্রোথটাକୁ ଆପଣମାନେ Brundtland Commission or World Commission on Environment and Development, it has defined Brundtland Commission very nicely that sustainability can happen only when the present generation can utilize the natural resources, but without depleting it. Deplete करने अर्थ कौन? You are going to deprive the future generation from using it. Sustainability means it's a continuum, intergenerational. I have a right to use the nature, but by way of utilizing the nature, I cannot prevent the coming generation, the future generation to utilize it. I cannot deprive them. This is sustainability. So you see, the right of the present generation is honored and right of the unborn, which are yet to come. And also, very interestingly, environmentalism not only thinks in terms of the right of the human being, it also thinks in terms of the right of the non-humans, the right of the tree, the right of the rivers, the right of the mountains to exist. It is one ecosystem, entirety, good holism. Human life is connected also with the non-human world. If the man shall think that I can live upon the non-human world and indiscriminately overuse it, then he is mistaken. Once he misuses or overuses nature, he also makes threatening attempts to his own life. So he should be very cautious. It is an ecosystem. Everything is interconnected. So environmental movements, these are the basic norms, environmentalism. So Indian environmental movement is very critical of the colonial model of development pursued by the post-colonial states. Post-independent state failed to build up a development agenda based on the needs of the people and continue to advocate the modern capitalist agenda. That means only economic development is more emphasized. That way, destruction of environment, poverty, and marginalization of the rural communities happen. So, the economic developmental model have to be pursued very cautiously. Environmentalists started that local communities were best suited to conserve natural resources. For example, infructuous rights, forest rights, right to the village outlot, it has been given to the local people. They have a right to grow the trees, to grow the forest. They have a right to utilize the fruits of the forest also. So, unlike in the West, a significant characteristics of the environmental movement in India is that our movements also involve women, the poor section, the disadvantaged masses, because these sections they are also directly affected by the environmental degradation. A woman has become a victim. A marginalized person also has become a victim. The poor has become a victim. So, scholars like Gadgil and Guha identify four broad strands within the environmental movements in India, which are based on vision, ideology, and strategy. The first type are those which emphasized on the moral necessity to restrain overuse and ensure justice to the poor and marginalized. Mainly, Gandhians belong to this category. The second strand stresses on the need of the dismantle the unjust social order through struggle. Marxists mostly follow this strand. And the third and fourth strands advocate reconstruction. That is employing technologies appropriate to the given context and time. You must have heard about something called appropriate rural technology, ART. They reflect the concern of the scientists of the spontaneous efforts of the communities at the village level who aim at protecting local community forests for the right to pursue environment friendly agricultural practices. So please remember the environmental movement has become most important and significant movement in the present world, not only in India, also but internationally and also nationally. The message it gives is think globally, act locally. So at every level, the environment must be conserved. In this discussion, I can only briefly take you to some of the important environmental movement जोटा कि परिवेश संरक्षण आंदोलन आम भारत रे जोटा हेतिला गोटे होची चिपको मूवमेंट आई थिंक रिपीटेडली आई हैव टोल्ड यू इट वाज इन 1970s हिमालयन जोन रे हेतिला गढ़वाल मंडल रे एंड सुंदरलाल बहुगुणा इज the leader of that particular movement and also another important leader is Chandi Prasad Bhatt. So Sundarlal Bahuguna and Chandi Prasad Bhatt, they are the two important leaders. You know, in Chipko movement, there is a large number of women participating in it. Chipko means to hog the tree. They have hogged the tree. They have embraced the tree and saved the tree from cutting down, being cut by the forest contractors. So they could save the last tracts of the forest in the Himalayan region. Garhwal region अनेक से गच्छ वृक्षलता को सेमाने रक्षा करि पारथिले. Very important. It was fought almost in Gandhian line. There is no violence, no bloodshed, nothing. Large number of women they have gone to embrace the trees. So the forest contractors they failed to cut the trees. Finally, it was a very successful movement. So the demands of the Chipko movement are complete stoppage of cutting the trees, traditional rights of the community, making the arid forest green by encouraging people's participation in tree cultivation, then formation of the village committees to manage their own forest, and development of the forest-related home-based industries, and making available the raw material, money, and techniques for this. And also, another demand is giving priority to afforestation in the light of the local conditions, requirements, and varieties. ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ ମୁଭମେଣ୍ଟ ଦେଖନ୍ତୁ ଆपिକୋ ମୁଭମେଣ୍ଟ ଚିପକୋଟା ହେଇଥିଲା ଗରୱାଲ ମଣ୍ଡଳରେ inspired by this Chipko movement another movement was also it was going on in Western Ghat South India in Uttar Kannada region of Karnataka. It was in 1983. Sethi madhya destruction of forest was caused due to commercial tree felling. So in September 1983, women and youth of the region they decided to launch a movement to protect the forests. So, in fact, this Apiko movement in South India, that is in Western Ghat area, became a symbol of people's power for the rights of natural resources besides the state. It was successful in its threefold objectives: protection of the existing forest cover, regeneration of the trees in the denuded lands, and also utilizing forest wealth with proper consideration to conservation of natural resources. So with these objectives being fulfilled, APICO movement can be told to be one of the successful environmental movements. Then another movement was also in Madhya Pradesh and Gujarat, Narmada Bachao Andolan. You must be knowing that the leader was human leader Medha Patkar. It was in the western, the states, major states of western India, Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, and Maharashtra. It is one of the most important case studies in terms of uh, environmental conservation. Sardar Sarovar project, which was one interstate multi-purpose project, and this project with two mega projects like Sardar Sarovar project and Narmada Sagar project in Madhya Pradesh, the largest single river valley project with the objectives of making the world's largest man-made lake. You know, it was leading towards a lot of environmental degradation, ecological disaster. So before the Ministry of Environment even cleared the Narmada Valley Development Project in 1987, the World Bank sanctioned a loan for the largest dam, that is Sardar Sarovar, in 1985. It may mention that Narmada Bachao Andolan began as a fight for information about the Narmada Valley development projects. In 1988, Narmada Bachao Andolan demanded formally the stoppage of all works on the Narmada Valley development projects. The main issues of the projects are yet unresolved. However, what is more important is that the movement has been successful to a considerable extent. The achievements of this movement was exit of the World Bank from Sardar Sarovar in 1993, part of the Sardar Sarovar construction in 1994-99, withdrawal of foreign investors from Maheshwar Dam. So, Narmada Bachao Andolan is also another case study so far as the environmental conservation is concerned. And this is unique in the sense that this Andolan, this movement, underlined the importance of people's right to the information which the authorities finally had to concede under media and popular pressure. So it was not only successful, not only in mobilizing the hundreds and thousands of the people from different walks of life to put pressure on the state government for its anti-people policies affecting and displacing lakhs of tribals from the areas and livelihood. It also received immense international support. So, CIPCO, APICO, Narmada Bachao, Chilka movement, these are all environment related conservation movements. Side by side also there are many urban based environmental movements. Because of the pollution, in Delhi and other metropolitan towns, there is a lot of environmental pollution, environmental hazard, and also a lot, must be knowing about the Bhopal gas tragedy, that is Union Carbide, Bhopal West Union Carbide, the disaster associated with that particular event. So, a lot of PILs also they have been started, public interest litigations regarding this environmental pollution and all that. Then Delhi is one of the most polluted cities in the world. 3 issues related to environmental pollution have been focused in the activities of some concern of these civil society components. These are air pollution caused due to vehicular and industrial pollution, water pollution in Yamuna River, etc. So this has polluted the environment and made people, especially children and old, vulnerable to multiple diseases. Reacting to the court order, which was the result of a PIL, public interest litigation, the government made it compulsory to introduce the CNG vehicles. You must knowing now CNG vehicles they have been introduced. So now the state is very careful about devising policies which are mostly eco-friendly. So there are also environmental impact assessment cells that before giving green signal to any project, maybe industry or factory or whatever it may be, it must assess its impact. To what extent it is causing hazards to the environment. This is EI, environmental impact assessment. So that way environment movements are very significant. They have gone a long way in protecting the environment and the health of the people. So finally, within another 15-16 minutes time, I shall end up with the discussion, the connection with the social movements and democracy. And we can make one assessment of this social movements and democracy. You know, democracy means a government of the people, for the people, and by the people. It is a rule by the people. It's a system where people can change their rulers in peaceful manner by through periodic elections and all that. And it's a government which is conducted with a freely given consent by the people. And people are central to the democratic system. But when we think in terms of people, they are not homogeneous. In a stratified society like that of India, there are some people, those are economically, socially, politically very powerful. On the other hand, many people are powerless, they're dependent on others, and also they're economically, some of the people they're impoverished. So people of different social and economic strata have different interests. They have different life chances. Their perceptions of the system differ. So ingredients, if we study about ingredients of democracy, that there are three essential ingredients. They are political institutions, political process, and the substantial functioning. In the democratic system, political institutions such as electoral system and the legislature and the lawmaking organization, they provide scope and necessary mechanism to the citizens to participate directly or indirectly. Current election through the people virtually, let us say in our case, they participate indirectly in the lawmaking process, in the policy making. They elect their representatives to form the government, which takes the decision on behalf of the people. But the elected representatives, they cannot rule the society according to their whims. Rule of law is an essential component of the democratic system. There is a constitution. The laws are to be made according to the spirit of the constitution. Different institutions of the democratic society, they maintain checks on each other. It's like a check and balance. But democracy without politics is a body without soul. And politics means conflict and struggle of interest and ideologies. Politics is concerned with control over resources, use and distribution. Politics involves debates and decisions on identifying the priorities in policy making regarding the use of resources and generation of surplus. In the political system, different points of views and ideologies are being formed on societal matters. They compete for power and influence political decisions. So the objective of the political system is to cater to the needs and aspirations of the people. The system must function, aim at development of all, because it's a democracy. Policies cannot be made in order to cater to the interest only of the few. In that sense, democratic system is in a developing society like India or any third world country for that matter, is a process of social transformation so that all citizens can participate in the system with equal capacity. So democracy operates with its limitations. The institutions, their mechanisms to attain certain objectives, their structure in terms of composition of membership, organizational system, locating the power and responsibilities, control over the resources, procedures for functioning to take decisions and carrying out responsibilities are formed in context of time and objectives. Institutions in the democracies are definitely important, but not always enough in attending substantial aspects of politics. The institutions they provide limited choice to the people. Social movements build up pressure on the policymakers for reforming the institutions, create new institutions, keep check on abuse of power, and demonstrate needs and expectations of the people. So social movements provide avenues for social transformation. So definitely they play a very pivotal role in democratic setups. Public protests have a certain functional utility, even in a parliamentarian form of government. Because the protest movements they keep the rulers, the policymakers on toes. They always remain alert. They must feel the pulse of people. So public protests they provide safety valve where people express their grievances. You see what a nice connection with movements, social movements, and democracy. They express. So the protest movements they provide safety valve where people express their grievances. That gives warning to the government against rising dissatisfaction and forces and leads to remedial measures. So social movement and democracy they are complementary. The so-called policymakers They cannot ignore and neglect the public demands. So, in functioning democratic system during the last 5 decades, it has brought certain positive transformation in our traditionally hierarchical society. Brahminical framework of social order has been delegitimized. Rule of law, equal citizenship, social and economic equality, they have been codified in legal systems. And now they are accepted as moral principles to be maintained and attained. And one of the most striking positive contributions of the system is that people from lower strata participate in electoral process and exercise their franchise. Democratic system also has created various institutions, and they also act in a principle of checks and balances. So there cannot be any abuse of power, misuse of power. Of course, ironically, democracy is used to perpetuate power of the few to decide destiny of all. આપણે જો મને ପ୍ୟାରେଟୋଙ୍କର philosophy rule by few ବିଷୟରେ ଜାଣିଛନ୍ତି ଯେ even in democracy it is always the few people, those who or the powerful minority can rule over the majority because majority is disorganized. So there is always one what is called iron law of oligarchy which operates. Even in democracy, few people have become powerful. That is one iron in democracy. So it is what is called the rule of the elites. जो हमारी elite theory पढ़ी Pareto, Burnham, Wright Mills, etc. They can appreciate it better. So that is irony. Also in democracy, both in the developed and developed world, the rule of the minorities also operates somewhere or other. Number and coverage of the social movements in different forms, they have increased in all societies, including in the democratic system. This is primarily because the rising aspirations of the people, they are not adequately met by the existing political institutions. Rajani Kothari and several others, they have observed that as the gap between the expectation of the people and performance of the system widens, mass upsurge in the form of movements increase. ଧର ଲୋକମାନେ ଯୋଉ ଆଶା ଏବଂ ବିଶ୍ୱାସ ନେଇକି ଗୋଟେ ଗଭର୍ଣ୍ଣମେଣ୍ଟ ବା ଗୋଟେ ପଲିସି ମେକର୍ସ ମାନଙ୍କୁ ଚୁଜ୍ କରିଛନ୍ତି, but their expectations are not fulfilled and they land up in the infestations that creates a scope for protest movements, social movements. So in the view of these theorists, democracy is degenerating into an authoritarian technocratic state. The state in turn has become subjugated to market forces. So few scholars like A.R. Desai, they have observed that the parliamentarian form of government as a political institutional device has proved to be inadequate to continue or expand concrete democratic rights of the people. This form either operates as a cell within which the authority of the capital perpetuates itself, obstructing and reducing the opportunities for people to consciously participate in the process of the society. So many scholars believe that social movements play positive role in democracy in different ways. They are the outcome of the people's political consciousness. Success and effectiveness of the social movements depend on the extent mobilization. Greater mobilization tends to expand political horizons, lead to further democratization of the society. And social movements express aspiration, needs, and demands of the people, who can only assert through collective action and become effective. So, number of social movements influence policymakers and compel them to enact laws to meet their demands, advancing or protecting their interests. So we have already gone through the Dalit movements, backward class movements, peasant movements, many other movements, and they have their own stand, they have their own objectives, so far as the democratic context is concerned. So democracy and social movements, they are closely linked, like two sides of the same coin. Social movements are the expression of collective will, is the soul of the democracy, expression of the people grievances against the system, their needs, their aspirations. So some of the movements, they have to some extent succeeded in enhancing the democratization process in the society, mobilizing the people, and also politicizing the people to take part in the decision making process. And to some extent also they have influenced the public policy in their favor. Of course, all the social movements, they do not necessarily lead to greater democratization. Nature of the social movements in terms of their goals, in terms of their ideologies, organizational structures, in terms of their programs, they play important role in strengthening or otherwise of the democracy. So to what extent a movement can be successful, to what extent it can democratize the people, they can meet the aspirations of the people, it depends on the very nature, the structure, the ideology, and the leadership of the movement concerned. So I think we have now discussed in brief the very connection between democracy and the social movements, and the very role social movements play in the context of democracy. So I hope with this limited time I have tried to cover up all the topics which have been given under this broad subject, social movements and politics in India. So since it's already time, and also have ended up with a very, I mean, brief and very pithy discussion. And I wish that I have not missed any important points of discussion.
Thank you,
And with
sir.
this, I wish best of luck for all of you, and I take goodbye. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for the patient listening, and wish you all the best.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Wish you all a successful career. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.